Having become well accustomed to goodbyes at boat docks and railway stations, the former Olympian once again followed his usual ritual: embrace, kiss, forced smile, and words of comfort. But this time felt different. It was early 1941 in Japanese-occupied China, and life for missionaries like Eric Liddell and his family had become extremely dangerous. His wife Florence was pregnant with her third child, and it was clear that she could not give birth safely there. Eric's conscience couldn't let him break his contract with the London Missionary Society, and the LMS's ineptitude and lack of reality were forcing them to stay put, even though the conditions were treacherous. For Eric, the safety of his wife and children came first. So with a heavy heart, he sent them on a boat bound for Canada. And there he walked down the gangway without looking back. To do so would be more than he could bear. That September, he received news of the birth of his third daughter. 2 years went by, and World War II was raging. The Japanese interned all foreigners. Eric was sent to a former mission compound turned prison. Somehow, in the middle of such dire conditions and longing for his family, Eric took on far more than his official role as a teacher. You see, he organized worship, games for children, and became a quiet source of strength for hundreds there. People sought him out for comfort, advice, or just a kind word. To many, he was simply Uncle Eric, not a former Olympic champion, but a man who served with joy in suffering. Eric never got to meet his family again. On February 21st, 1945, just 5 months before liberation, Eric Liddell died in the camp from a brain tumor, likely worsened by exhaustion and malnutrition. His final words were, "It's complete surrender." What drove Eric to stay? What gave him the resilience to send his family off in the face of unbearable suffering? What made him endure to the very end and retain hope and charity for others? That's this week on A Little Better. Our goal on this podcast is to know Jesus better and with the power of His Spirit, do better. So together, we can be a little better. Welcome to A Little Better, a podcast where we strive to help you become mature in your faith. I'm Calum Shaw, and today I'm joined by Brittany McCracken and Drew Karshner, where we're discussing preparing for suffering. We're in a series called Through the Fire. And just so you know, we will be referencing a message that Drew preached on September 7th that is very much worthwhile going to revisit. It is a really good message. You can go to northridgerochester.com and listen back to that message. Also, I would encourage you, share your thoughts if you have questions, comments, or anything like that. Put it in the comments below, or email us at podcast@northridgerochester.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. This really helps us. It gives us some feedback on whether we're actually helping to serve you well. So that helps us a ton. Let's kick this off. We're talking about suffering. It's not exactly the happy, cheery topic. What is suffering? And is it different, or how is it connected to pain?
I mean, I think it's, can you suffer without pain? Probably not. I think it's definitely connected to pain. Now, that can be physical pain, psychological pain, right? There's a lot of different pains out there. Like standard definition of suffering is when you walk through something that hurts. Mm-hmm. That's like the Drew Webster Dictionary definition. But I think there's all kinds of suffering, so it's like a very complex, nuanced topic. Mm-hmm. Because, I think there's layers of suffering. I think there's certain suffering, like the brush burn I talked about in my message, right? That's you're suffering, but it's temporary, it's short, it heals. There's some suffering that lasts longer, continues on, and then some suffering that you just never goes away.
So in the context that we're talking about today, are we talking about the deep hardship, or are we talking about the brush burn or are we talking about like, you know, the kind of momentary stuff?
Yeah, I would say in the context we're talking about, you know, deep, difficult, painful, lasting suffering.
Our world seems to be so averse to suffering. If anything, in the Western world, we've kind of tried to make suffering as low or as low as possible. We want things to be pleasurable, more efficient. But the Bible counters that reality, right? So what does the Bible then talk about when it comes to expecting suffering or embracing suffering that kind of counteracts that modern reality?
I mean, it flips the script, right? Like, the Bible teaches us that through suffering, some of the most valuable things are produced, right? So like when we talk about, like in our culture, avoiding suffering, like we are actually avoiding the most valuable things in life. That's what I think that's what the Bible teaches, right? Not that our lives have to be miserable, full of suffering, but like God redeems suffering to make us more like him. And that's the ultimate goal, right? That's why we do this podcast, right? We want to be mature in faith, right? And we want to look more like Jesus. And like suffering in our culture is a bad thing, right? But suffering in the Bible is a worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just like, my wheels are turning.
What are you chewing on?
Just like anything you can look back in your past and like see the suffering that you've gone through and like how much good that's produced in your life. Obviously it's like never enjoyable at the time. But just like, I look back at my life, like all my experiences, and I'm really thankful for everything I've gone through, because it's like, it's really developed so much more character in me and so many like good things that I can look back now and say I'm thankful for it. At the time, I'm like, this is awful, but it always produces something good if you choose to work through it. Where sometimes suffering and pain can just it can just like overcome you and overwhelm you, and it can produce bad things in you, I guess.
Well, I think we see this in our culture, and I just don't think they understand it. Like you referenced Chariots of Fire. There's so many movies out there that we love. And what makes a great story that we are enticed by is someone walking through hardship and it not breaking them, right? The house doesn't crash, right? The life isn't over, but that suffering actually produces a different story for that person. And we in our culture, we love that. We love movies like that.
I mean, that's the essence of storytelling, is that someone, like a hero, goes through something hard, and then if it never gets to a climax or a resolution, it's in the resolution that we actually get the buzz.
But no one wants that, right? Like everybody wants to jump past the suffering to get to the greatness, but like it doesn't work that way.
Have you ever seen that many people they're like, oh, I wish a miracle would happen in my life, but they're never.
You wish a what?
Miracle?
Miracle. Okay,
Miracle.
I thought
you
heard
said
America.
So did I.
It's like, I don't know about that.
I was like, wait, what?
A miracle. That people are like, oh, I wish I could experience a miracle, but never are willing to find themselves in a situation that requires a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't,
we're so averse to it.
I also think like true suffering, you shouldn't like try to put yourself in that.
Sure.
Although like for me, like running is suffering. So like I should probably choose to do.
Yeah, I know. I would almost push back on that. I do think the Bible teaches us that we should like put ourselves in situations of suffering. Now, again, I'm not talking about like be stupid, right? But like with our health, we become healthier by putting ourselves in positions of pain, right?
Yes.
And I think even spiritually, right, we have to build disciplines that hurt our lives, that produce pain, that aren't like what I would call deep, overwhelming.
Right.
Like we're not
Right.
supposed to like, give ourselves
Discomfort.
diseases or something like that or anything stupid. But like pain is something that we should embrace. Something that we should actually, I would say, as far as like strive after.
Because
One, it eliminates our addiction to comfort. It proves to us that pain is worth it, right? Mm-hmm. We all desire pleasure, we all desire comfort, but that holds us back from ultimately what we want in life. And I think when you pursue pain in the appropriate manner, it like breaks that. When you experience pain and you realize the results that you get, it makes you hungry for more, right? And it does break that addiction that I think we as Western Christians have to comfort. We worship comfort.
Yeah. I mean, I think of it too, even as like a parent now. I'm like, if I gave my child the most cushy, best life possible, I'd probably end up
So
with
true.
a really like bratty, self-centered child. And I don't necessarily want to like force my child into bad situations by any means, but like I do want adversity to like come into their life and like coach them through that.
the common question is, why does God allow suffering? And in that framework of that pain is actually a good thing for us, maybe that's the wrong question that we should be asking. Why doesn't God give us more pain if it's better for us?
It's true.
Now, it's a hard tension to wrestle with in how much do we strive for pain, because that goes like, remember in the Da Vinci Code, there's like weird scene of like the guy like the chastity. It's like, it's gnarly. That's an extreme unhealthy end of it, but there seems to be a healthy pursuit of pain. What about comfort is so toxic?
I think one, it keeps you stagnant. Like comfort keeps you where you are, right? It keeps you still, right? Pain creates movement, right? Because at some level, when you're in pain, you want to get out of it. And so you have to do things to somehow get out of that pain. When you're comfortable, you're content.
So the secular myth is that progress can effectively save us. That progress towards efficiency, progress towards healthcare and the economy and all these things that makes up our society, actually, it tells us that we will be more comfortable, more satisfied, more content.
Right.
So where does that lie begin, and where does the truth of God saying, no, suffering is actually the way forward? And is there, maybe you can't answer this question, but if there's that very real tension that we live in between the two of them, and are we supposed to just throw off the cultural flow that we are living in for the sake of just choosing suffering? Should that take over all of society, that we should just suffer more and be less about efficiency?
I wish I knew the answer to this question, because I feel like I'd be a better follower of Jesus, right? Like what is the perfect mix? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with experiencing comfort, right? It's the worship of comfort that becomes the problem. But like, where's the beautiful balance of like being okay in comfort, but also embracing pain, right? Where is that crossroads in life where like, hey, it is okay. I think God gives us certain things in life that are pleasurable, that we should enjoy and thank him for, but not draw, like have a line where I'm not gonna worship this or stay stagnant in this. And I don't know if I know the answer to that. I know in my life I try to keep, I hate this word, balance or margin of like, am I too lopsided, right? Am I so afraid of pain that I'm trying to avoid it, right? That's a question I think you should ask yourself. Like, am I okay with pain? And do I at some level with my health and with how I go about things, am I okay enduring pain? Am I enduring pain? Or have I allowed comfort to kind of like consume me?
Yeah.
How's that played out for you guys? In that tension between like, that you've maybe found yourself in a state of avoidance, or that you are in a comfort space and not wanting to let go of that?
So for me, I would say it's with my diet and my health, right? One of the ways that I worship comfort is through food and through a lack of exercise.
Amen.
You know, I love to eat good food. And like, I like to eat it because it makes me feel good, right? And I don't like to work out because it hurts, especially when you don't work out for a while.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think this is where like one of those things we talked about is like having a community. I'm in a group we just finished, right? It's called We Do Hard Things group. And so like we just did a challenge, like 200 push-ups a day. Like sounds stupid, but like it hurt. And what it does is it forces you out of comfort and into pain. And I'm 31 days, I just finished. And like, dude, wow. Like I'm like, yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, I've shared in the podcast before about how like late last year I started doing cold showers to kind of try and rewire my brain into because of I was avoiding doing hard things because I didn't want to experience more pain in my life, and that became a pattern. And so I wanted to try and jolt that, do something different, so that I am more used to and able to tolerate pain. I mean, it's so marginal.
But here's a nuance to that. Like, I think we do hard things so we can get back to comfort. Right? So, example, what I mean by that is like, I diet or I work out so I can splurge on food, right? So like
that's how you kind of go through in your mind.
I just think that's how people work, right? We don't really embrace pain. We use pain to justify our comfort.
Sure.
So like I
Sometimes.
go to the gym and I work out so I can eat the donuts. And I think at some level when we use pain to justify comfort, we miss the meaning of pain. That's deep.
Is it?
I don't know. I just wanted to say that.
Brett, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, it was like a year ago, my husband and I started like polar plunging, if you've ever done that.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's a horrible
that
experience.
is like pins and needles through your whole body. But it also was like, it created this like mental grit that like I never had before, where I had to just like separate myself from my body. I don't know. Have you done it? I think you've done polar plunging.
It's a horrible experience.
You do cold showers. That's almost
Doesn't even count.
doesn't
We
even
call
count.
that swimming in Scotland.
Oh, because of the weather, I get it.
But I
Wild
think
swimming.
like we've worshipped comfort like so much that we don't have any mental grit oftentimes with things that hurt, things that are uncomfortable. I think suffering's at a different level. So like we haven't even trained ourselves for discomfort so that when the suffering comes, we are so far removed from how to deal with that. And
So it
it's
sounds,
a training.
it sounds
ground.
like by, you know how in like working out, you effectively tear the muscles, like micro tears in your muscle so that it grows bigger, and then you can take on more weight. And it sounds like what you guys are saying is that by somewhat getting used to the micro tears emotionally, mentally, spiritually on small stuff, by like doing the discipline, whether it's spiritual discipline or not, that can help prepare us for suffering that might be a more deeper form of pain or suffering that you're talking about.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm actually just like thinking of that verse about Jesus too, that like he was well acquainted with suffering. And I don't feel like I know enough about like his life pre the cross to say like what kind of suffering and pain he went through. But I think that even led him, when he was at the cross, to be able to like manage that. Not manage it, because obviously he was very stressed to the point of like sweating blood.
Yeah.
But he had like the Bible tells us like that he was well acquainted with sorrow.
So that's part of our preparation for suffering. I'd like to kind of move into, I've got 5 E's to talk through when it comes to preparing suffering that is kind of extrapolated from your message. But Brit, I'm curious from your end, you a few years ago. How old is Lennon now?
She's about to be 3.
About to be 3. That giving birth was a pretty traumatic experience for you, to the point where I don't think I can do more kids.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that experience?
The birth, or like just...
Yeah, like what
preparing
made
to do it again?
Well, what made it so traumatic? And I'd like to get to the fact that you've now made the decision that you are pregnant again.
No turning
and
back.
Yes,
point,
this is not from lack of activity. Yeah, so I won't go into a crazy detail, but basically my birth experience was terrible. I felt like it was like a near-death experience for me, and almost lost my daughter too. And I remember like even talking about it to someone the next day on the phone, and like my teeth started chattering. When I left the hospital, I felt that feeling of like, if you've seen a horror movie, like if someone emerges the next day after the story's over and like the sun's out and life goes on, and I was like, oh no, something just happened to me. And so I remember too, I was like just using a lot of survival language. Oh, we made it, we survived. And I kind of had just like really just left that moment and was like, I never want to go back there. But then fast forward like a couple of years later, my husband and I started talking about like having another kid. And I just started having panic attacks, major anxiety, just like in a split second. I was just like overcome with like so much fear. And
because it took you back to that moment, or was it more just like, I don't want to have to do that again?
I didn't connect the two for like a while. And actually like even if I never chose to like have a child again, like I definitely would have needed to do some work, because I just developed what's that, small spaces, claustrophobia. Like I was on an elevator in New York and like a bunch of people got on, and I was like panic attack, ran off the elevator. My friends are like, what's happening here? And I was like, I don't know, like I've never liked small spaces, but it was just like everything was amplified.
Sure.
And I became like really obsessed with like my health. I was like waking up in the middle of the night buying supplements, just trying to like grasp at control of like anything I could. What was the question?
No, it
You're
gives us
telling
a
your
bit of a
story.
frame. So that's pretty vivid, obviously without going into the details of the birth, the actual event itself, but how that ended up manifesting itself within you, and be like, that was not good.
Yeah.
What got you to then to a place where you're like, I'm going to embrace potentially doing that all over again? And does that fear,
Yeah.
is that still a legitimate fear? Or not a legitimate fear, but is that still something that comes back and like, I have to deal with this potentially all over again?
I mean, it's definitely not gone completely. First of all, I immediately the next day, when like I felt like I had like a 2-day long panic attack.
The next day from...
the next day. It really like, I had like a major panic attack one night where like I had to count myself to sleep, thinking I'd wake up the next day and it would be gone, and it wasn't gone. And I remember I finally like called this therapist, because my boss actually, like, I feel like this is like a piece of God in my story, is he like gave me all these resources that I didn't know I would need. She said she had a traumatic birth and she went to therapy and it did wonders for her. So immediately, like the next day, I finally just like called a therapist. And I did EMDR. It was really great. Just to be able to process through like a really traumatic thing. So that was helpful to me. A lot of talking to God, a lot of yeah, I feel like my pain, panic, anxiety also like deepened my relationship with God. Just, I'll probably cry, so I'm sorry. But I remember like in just the depths of my panic attack being like, God, why did you do this? And I just remember him like saying like, yeah, it's part of the curse. And like, this is why I sent my son too. Like, I don't like that this happened to you, but like I had a redemption plan. So there have been like quite a few moments where like just going to God and like being honest with him about how I'm feeling. And he's just like very like spoken evidently to me and given me some answers. But EMDR, Jesus. And honestly now, like I am still scared of giving birth, but I'm not, it doesn't overwhelm me anymore. I see the like purpose in it. And one of the like big labor phrases is the only way out is through. And I just see like the good that can produce in me. And I see like the purpose in the suffering for specifically birth, right? Like that one's pretty obvious. I think everyone's suffering has purpose. Unfortunately, we don't always like know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
But like that's still a truth.
We're going to be, a message in a few weeks' time is going to be on the purpose of suffering. So be sure to keep tuning into these messages. This is you'll actually have, I think, an interesting perspective as we talk through these 5 things. The first one, when it comes to building a strong foundation, when it comes to preparing for suffering, the first one is expect suffering. You even mentioned in your message, 1 Peter 4, is like, don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal. How do we have correct expectations for suffering?
Expect it.
Yeah, I mean,
is that enough? Just like expecting, okay, bad things are going to happen, suck it up and go on with it? Or
I think it's helping, like we've talked about it, like knowing what suffering does too. I think not just expect it, but understand that it's not always bad, right? God uses it. And so, but yeah, I think you just have to be like, hey, life isn't all roses. And I think we all know that, but I think just reminding yourself. I don't think anybody is like, oh, wow, life is hard. Like, and that's duh. But I think just reminding yourself, like in the good moments, like enjoy this because it won't always be like this, right? You know, breathe, take in the good times, but they won't always be good times. And if they are always good times, enjoy them. But remind yourself, suffering is part of our lives. So,
yeah. I think even like Rachel and Taylor's story, like touched on that. Like their grief and their loss has also produced like the ability to be present and like enjoy the things around them.
Yeah.
I think it was about 2 years ago, we found our dream property and we did a lot of crazy financial moves to make it happen and to purchase it. But we jumped into it way sooner than we were really ready for it.
Right in the midst of that was when I got pregnant. Pretty smooth pregnancy other than like morning sicknesses and, but everything was really smooth. All of our testing came back normal. Everything was great. So I was in my 39th week and Mom was in town. She was sitting next to me and she said, have you been feeling a lot of movement, like a lot of kicks, the kicks that you get up in the ribs? I was like, have I been feeling movement? I feel like I maybe haven't felt the baby kick in a while. I was starting to get a little worried. So I called in to my care provider and they were like, you should just to be on the safe side, go to Strong and just get checked. So we get there and as they're performing the ultrasound on me, it was just dead silent. And still in my mind, I thought, everything's gotta be fine. And the doctor turned and looked at us and said they couldn't find a heartbeat on our baby. And I just looked at her like in disbelief. It didn't register, I couldn't believe what she was telling me.
I still just couldn't believe it. It was a perfect pregnancy. There was nothing wrong with the baby. Every visit was excellent, but I think everything else in our life wasn't that great at the time. We had this house that was overwhelming us, so we were super stressed, and it led to a very stressful pregnancy. Despite everything checking out fine, we couldn't help but feel guilty or feel like we were undeserving, that we were undeserving of him. It was one of our biggest points of suffering, was feeling like he was taken from us because we were unworthy.
During the course of that 24 hours that we were kind of waiting for labor to set in, I would say we both just felt the Holy Spirit in a way that we have never felt it before, and just felt God comforting us and walking with us and within us in just such a palpable way. I could not imagine how I was going to deliver this baby and get through the intensity that is labor, and just knowing that we didn't have a child on the other side of that. But it ended up being one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. I just remember calling on all of the love and the support of our friends and family, and I felt so enveloped in that love, and I truly believe that is what helped bring our baby to us. And even though he was deceased, it was just the most beautiful experience to meet him and see his beauty. He was absolutely perfect. His hair and his toes and fingers, and we ended up naming him Broder. Something that I see differently now about suffering and grief is that there can be beauty in it, and it doesn't really make any sense, and how something so horrific and something as tragic as what we experienced can still have beauty.
The lesson that has come from suffering is I felt like we suffered a loss of immense time and memories, just dreaming of the future and not living in the moment. It's still a struggle, taking the moments to just hear the birds chirp, or the crickets at night, and looking up and seeing the stars. We just pass by all these wonders that God's created, and I try to take more time to watch our kids as they are trying to figure something out on their own, or watch them play and hear their laughs and their giggles and how it changes over time.
We experienced people, Christians and non-Christian, friends and family in our lives, who just came around us to pray, to text us without expecting a response. It really taught us how to show up for other people when they're going through something. Now that's something that I want to teach my family, is that we show up for people. And even if it's just providing physical needs, I think sometimes that's more than enough. Sometimes there's just not words to say. And so many people said that to us, there's just no words. But here's a meal. There's just no words. Or here's a toy for your kids. It made us feel so loved, and I feel that, that's something that we have learned through this, is how to take care of people who are suffering. To someone going through suffering or a loss or grief, don't be tempted to sit in bitterness. I think there is a tendency to be bitter, or sometimes to question God, and I think it's just a dangerous road to go down.
The piece of advice that kind of comes to mind when I think about suffering or preparing for it is just knowing you're going to have to go through it. You can't go around it. And you can try to avoid it and do all sorts of other things, or stuff it down and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep marching forward, but it's gonna manifest somehow, some way, somewhere in your life in a way that's not right or not healthy. But there are lessons to be taken from whatever you go through.
The second one, so that was expect suffering, building a strong foundation, preparing for suffering. The second one is embrace suffering. Talk to me about that. What does it mean to like embrace suffering? And that's a kind of strange, that seems like a very in the moment active thing, but when it comes to preparing suffering, to preparing to embrace suffering, what does that mean?
I think asking for it. I know that sounds crazy, right? But like I genuinely think as Christians, if we get comfortable, God brings suffering into my life, right? Like to take it that serious.
So it's not necessarily that kind of flat prayer at night where I'm just like, okay, God, bring on the suffering. Yeah. It's actually, it's almost like the prayer for patience.
Yeah, it is
inviting you to be having to wait for something. It's like, I don't want to be comfortable, so I'm willing to go through something.
Well, let me ask this. Think of all the good things we like in life, and how quickly are we to ask for them from God? Right? Pretty quickly, right? Hey, God, I want this good thing from you. If we all admit suffering is good, why wouldn't we ask God for it? Just a thought. I've done that once in my life.
How did that turn out?
Yeah. And I had major lung surgery. I'm not lying. Like it.
So don't pray that if you're not ready.
But listen, I'm serious. Like, but man, that changed my life. Right? That produced in me, like literally what nothing else could. Right? And I haven't prayed that prayer since. So the trauma is still there.
Yeah.
But like, if Christ suffered for us, like I do genuinely think we could get to the place of maturity to say, God, even I'm okay if you bring suffering into my life. Maybe I'm not asking for it, but I'm okay if it comes.
Yeah. Brit, you're kind of walking through this right now. Is it you're literally choosing to embrace it?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
First of all, just like, well, I am doing it for like a purpose. So, that it's maybe a little bit different than like grief or loss. Mm-hmm. But I know like the good in the end that it will bring me. And ultimately, like right now it looks like sometimes being a little afraid and processing through that with people, talking to God, and also, sorry, I just like totally lost my train of thought. Okay. I'm so pregnant.
You are pregnant.
Pregnancy brain.
Can I ask you something? You said like you're doing it because something good's going to come.
Yeah.
Like, can you define that? Obviously, you're going to have a baby, right? That's the good. Are you talking about anything else in that?
I'm going to be really proud of myself. That sounds terrible, but I'm doing the thing that like gave me the most amount of fear in my life, and I'm doing that again.
Yeah, I think you should be proud of yourself.
And I'm going to be so proud of myself at the end. But also just reminding myself that like pain and discomfort is temporary. Like even if you have like a certain pain for the rest of your life, like this is not all there is. There's more to come. And it is temporary. You're not going to feel pain forever. And like ultimately, even if it's not on this earth, God will redeem your story. And I think too of like when they're talking about when Jesus comes back is you will ask nothing of me. Like we will have understanding of like everything.
Yeah.
And that I find a lot of comfort in.
Good.
There's going to be a lot of people listening right now that are going to be highly unsatisfied with these answers because they're like, but what about my situation? And I would just encourage if you are listening or watching to just be patient because we are actually going to be tackling a lot of these in the next over these 5 weeks that we're in this series, including we're going to have a psychologist on talking about some of the tools we can do. We're going to have some other stories of people that are actively in it. And that when it comes to embracing suffering in the moment, I think you will actually glean some more information than when it comes to right now we're talking about preparing for suffering. So just be patient, please.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, like, I still don't want to go through what I'm going through, and that can like give so much anxiety to people, and like that's like just a normal feeling. Like you're gonna feel like that, and so first of all, like don't feel bad about how you don't want to go through pain and suffering, but also embrace the fact that the only way out is through.
Yeah.
You don't want to because we want to avoid it at all costs, but it will produce something good in you.
Could you simply just say embracing suffering is choosing it even if you don't want it?
There's a great quote.
At a certain point, you have to.
There's a great quote by Todd Hall. It said, "Research suggests that the amount of growth one experiences is directly related to the amount of intentional engagement with the trial."
Yeah.
It's not about like
agree more.
avoiding it, not about, it's the only way is through, as you said.
Yep.
Let's keep moving. So the third thing is evaluate suffering from the past. Like how can we learn from past experiences? Even like, can we look back and be like, how can we know if we did something well or not? There's obviously something to learn, but is there a way in which we can know, I didn't go through that well, what can I learn? How do we do that evaluation?
Oof.
I mean, you evaluate like you do anything. You look back and you see the mistakes you've made, the ways you didn't. Like, man, I had a poor attitude, or I didn't consider that pure joy, or whatever. Like, and you just say, man, I don't want that to be the same next time. I think evaluation's huge, right? Because you're going to walk through pain and you're going to have moments where you don't handle it well, and that's okay. Right. The great news is it's like we talked about, like building a foundation, right? There are times where your foundation is going to crack, but the great news is the grace of God allows you to repair it. Mm-hmm. So like learn from the times where pain came and you did not have a good attitude, or you said things you regret, or you chose not to go back into, or whatever. Like it is like there's forgiveness and there's grace and there's hope for the future. And I think evaluating, the point of it is not to sit in your regret, right, but allow your regret to move you forward.
And to prepare you, I think, I don't want to make those mistakes. Like oftentimes people and we've talked before in the podcast about how when under stress or under the fight, flight, freeze, your connection with your prefrontal cortex, your rational side, the logical, good decision-making side, they're disconnected. Sure. They're neurologically disconnected. And so rather than, when I went through that situation, I was hyper emotional. I let my emotions dictate what was going on. And I made silly mistakes. I was like, I don't want to allow my emotions to drive me. Yep. I still want to be able to feel. I want to be able to acknowledge and name those things, but I don't want it to be the driver.
Yeah. I think, like for me, sometimes I stay like cool in the moment, but like processing it later. Like when I finally like process through like my traumatic birth, it really like revealed like how I rely on myself for like so many things. So like looking back and evaluating like actually where you're putting your hope and trust, it shook me to the core where I was like, is any of this real? And I think that's like a natural thought. But if I chose to like run with that, I probably would have lost my faith. Luckily, like what you said in your sermon, like I don't remember exactly, but
it's fine.
Something about like your whole foundation doesn't break, but like you're gonna like some windows are gonna break and stuff like that. Evaluating like how you're feeling about your faith at the time and like what's really at the core, and choosing to like that revealed something in you that was like really good, because something you were like relying only on yourself and not on God anymore, and like something you have not given to him.
There's the old adage, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you went through some therapy, and I think that's part of the evaluation process too, is healing from past hurt.
Yeah.
Because it will always seem to find its way back.
Yep.
And being able to evaluate, have I actually healed from that situation, or do I need to do some work? I think you had, there's a lot more we could say, and when we actually talk to psychologists on this topic, I'd love to get more of their thoughts on it, because you can easily go down a very bad trail with therapy. It's not all a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's some really bad therapy.
There's some bad therapists out there.
And it's not void of God either, but when it comes to preparing for suffering, a good thing is to do is evaluate suffering from the past. The fourth thing is employ God's word. We hear and act on it. So how does hearing and acting God's word help us? It feels, again, another one when you're in the moment, do what God is asking you to do, but why is that important in preparation?
So I just view it as like the cinder blocks of the foundation, right? The more you know God's word and the more you obey it, it's literally, I remember like a couple years ago, we put a garage on, and I remember like the slow, agonizing process of building the foundation. And it was literally cinder block by cinder block. It took like the beginning took way longer. And then the framing came up and you're like, wow, we have a garage, right? And I think this is the like slow, agonizing process of putting block by block, because what we don't understand is as we hear God's word and as we obey it, we are building literally the blocks of our foundation. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through hard things where God's word, literally the memorization of it, the familiarity with it, comforted me. Got me through, right? Like I even think of Taylor's story, like they're literally walking through this really difficult thing with no good at the end, right? There's a dead baby at the end, and they said they felt the Spirit comforting them like they've never experienced it.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the building blocks of preparing for suffering.
Yeah. I remember talking to a counselor at my last church, and I was going through some stuff, and he reminded me of this. The terminology was like, keep your side of the street clean. And what I've taken from that over the years is, in the heat of the moment, it's so easy for the little things to go, to make stupid decisions, to forget, to being mean, and to doing all the things that kind of break down the core of who you are. You start to lose your integrity, or your character starts to crumble a little bit when you're in the heat of the moment. But that is only really possible when you have that foundation.
Yeah. Where
you're actually doing if you can't do the little things or keeping your side of the street clean in like a good season, when suffering hits, it's going to be very, very hard to maintain those things.
For sure.
The last one is environment of community. What's so important about this?
You want to go?
How did you experience community with the whole birthing situation? Like, have you felt the hope and love of other people around you?
Yeah, I mean, after you give birth, everyone brings you meals, so. Yeah, I think part of like healing from it too, and like going down this journey now, is just telling people how I'm feeling. When I started having like panic attacks and anxiety, I remember like first being really embarrassed about it, and then like telling someone, everyone's like, oh yeah, we have that too. And oh yeah, we've experienced that too. So like, I think being honest about where you're at with people in your community is so important, because they'll also remind you you're probably not alone.
Yeah.
Like nothing you're experiencing is something only you've ever experienced. Like people have experienced it, and they can help you along that journey, make you feel like you're going to know someone that's further down that journey, that's going to also point you to hope. I can get through this. So yeah, community's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I think on the other side of community, like, part of my job is being there for people in suffering. And one thing that I've learned on that side is, like, you don't have to solve people's suffering.
No.
You don't have, like, when you go with someone, just be present with them, right? Just love them, provide for physical needs. Like, you don't have to say the perfect words. You don't have to say words at all. Yeah. Like, don't try to solve or fix what God's trying to do. Just walk with them through the journey.
And you don't have to tell them, consider it joy.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like,
Don't
I don't
actually
think joy
don't
is fake happiness.
That's right.
And I think also part of enduring suffering is to feel it, go through it, and don't try to just think positively and move past it. Like, actually just embrace it, embrace suffering.
We can also easily surround ourselves with the wrong people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I imagine there's people listening and there's like, I don't know if I can bring this to my community group. I don't know if I feel so isolated right now. I don't know who to talk. How do we navigate or figure out the right people to surround ourselves with?
I mean, you got to have trusted people in your life, right? Like trusted, I mean, who are going to tell you the hard thing when you don't want to hear it, right? Who love you unconditionally, right? Is going to put your best in front of everything else. You don't have to have a lot of those people, right? That can be family members, but you have to have that in your life, right? I think a community group is another place if you feel safe where you can, or even somebody in your community group. It doesn't have to be the whole group of guys or girls, but like, hey, pull someone aside and say, hey, I'm going through this. Would you pray with me? We have pastors counseling pastors. So there's a plethora of different avenues you can go, but you got to find someone you trust.
Yeah.
I think the fear of like telling someone and maybe it not going well, it like keeps people just trapped in more of their suffering. So it takes just like 20 seconds of bravery to just say the thing you're going through. And that's part of embracing it, I think, too, is you have to talk to someone about it.
Why do you have to talk to someone about it?
Because you're not alone and you're called to live in community and give community too. But also I think part of the power of like sin and pain and suffering is isolation. And like ultimately that's where I connect Emmanuel, God with us. You're never like isolated, right? Like sin is separation and being fully alone. But there's freedom and there's hope in confession, but also in like just sharing your story. Yeah. The lie of sin and pain is you're the only one going through this and you're all alone. And that's just not even true at all.
Kurt Thompson wrote a book called The Deepest Place, which I've been reading in preparation for this series. And he makes the connection between anxiety is connected to the Genesis story where we were disconnected. Our shame is what disconnects, and the fear that's behind our shame and the anxiety comes up is just a separation from God. And in actuality, he's given us one another. And Jesus is now with us, that we don't have to. It's a lie to think that we can or we are doing it alone.
Yeah.
But when it comes to preparation, it's really hard to try and. I'm thinking of a situation right now that we're walking through with someone, and it's like they kind of left the church a while ago, still a Christian, but I'm like, have you gone back to church? Like, and they're in the thick of it, right? They're going through the worst time of their life, and they're like, I just don't want to go back in and have to explain all this because they don't have the community that was built in preparing for something, because we know it's going to happen. We've said that in your message. You said it on the podcast just now. It's going to come, but it's how we prepare for it is going to dictate how well we actually are able to be receiving the nourishment and the formation that God has designed for suffering and pain to have in our life.
Yeah.
What do you guys hope for yourselves in the church when it comes to suffering? Well,
I mean, I think Drew wants people to ask for it.
I mean, I hope that we are ready for it, prepared for it. I hope we understand why it exists and how God uses it. And I hope we embrace it and learn from it. And allows us to be different because of it.
Yeah. I don't know about my hopes. I hope people can like turn to Jesus in their suffering. And if people are going through suffering or want to learn to embrace it, I would encourage them to just read the story of Jesus going to the cross and how he chose to respond. He was full of fear and anxiety to the point where he was sweating blood, but he also went to his Father, and he had his disciples around him. And he was fearful, but he did the hard thing anyways, because he knew what good it would bring us. And so I hope people are reminded that even if they never get the answers here on earth of why they're suffering, that they know that there's a purpose. And it really can just point them to Jesus and get him closer and more acquainted with our Savior.
You mentioned your message, Drew, that one of the biggest barriers for the church when it comes to their maturity is how we handle pain. So our hope, honestly, through this series is that we can be a church, that you can be a person of faith that can navigate the tricky, painful, hard waters of life and grow from it, honestly, grow from it and mature from it. And hopefully that you can stick around for this series. Really encourage you to do so, so that we can become more like Jesus. So let's become a little better by loving God and loving others. See you next week.